Camera speeds.
Marker?
My name is Alex Warren, and I make music. Life growing up was challenging. I was raised in an abusive household. Lost my dad when I was young, and it was definitely something that no one should ever go through. Losing my dad at such a young age didn't hit me till much later. I kind of didn't understand what was happening. I just remembered him being on his deathbed, or the day that he had died, and my mom telling me to say goodbye to my dad, and I was like, oh, where's he going? And, I walked in the room, and he was dead. And that's something that I think looking back now is extremely traumatic, but something that at the time I just don't think I was old enough to understand it. I had a lot of moments growing up where I kind of just realized that my life isn't the same as people around me. I think the biggest thing was like seeing a father-daughter dance. And it's like my sister had no one to go with. And then kind of just seeing everyone else around me reacting to death. And that to me, I was like, well, why are they reacting this way? I had to figure out myself. Where like someone didn't sit me down and explain to me, hey, your dad isn't here with us anymore, what that even means. I just put the pieces together, and it's really easy then to be like, oh, this is a bad situation. In my teenage years, I was heavily bullied. I think the biggest thing for me was because I had that lack of parental figures in general. My mom was abusive, and I just didn't have like a mother figure, and my dad was obviously not alive, and so I didn't have a father figure. So growing up was just a lot of trying to figure out who I was or what I was. And so I didn't know where I fit in. I didn't know what was cool or what other kids were doing, and I kind of just tried to fit in, I guess. The minute I turned 18, by the minute I quite literally mean at 12:01, I was kicked out of my house. My mom slammed open my door and was like, it's time to leave. And I was kicked to the curb with nothing but my phone, because I had paid for it myself. I just sat out front of my house for the longest time. And one of my friends picked me up, and I was sleeping in his car because his parents didn't like me. And then after that, I'd, sneak into his house sometimes and sleep in there. Or my friends would just kind of I was kind of getting passed around to like sleep at people's houses because they were amazing friends, but their parents, because the things my mom was saying, didn't like me. At the time, I was dating Cover, and I told her to move out here and we would get a place together, not realizing that I had no money, no job. I couldn't even figure out where I was sleeping. And she moved out, and I didn't tell her. And the minute I picked her up from the airport in my friend's car, I said, hey, and I explained the situation. And she goes, cool, fuck it, let's do it. And so she did it with me. And we slept in cars together. We didn't know where we were eating next for the longest time. We did it all together. Things that most people find traumatic, all of a sudden for me, was one of the best moments of my life, because I became closer with someone I always wanted to be with. When we were long distance and all of a sudden she's with me, I didn't care where we were sleeping. I didn't care what we were eating. I didn't care about any of that stuff. I just knew that she was with me. It was very normal for the things that I went through, or at least that's what I told myself. I don't know what a lot of people around me were like growing up, or what their families were like growing up, and so I just always assumed what I went through was something normal. Like I thought it was normal that your mom hit you. I thought it was normal that some people didn't have a parental figure growing up. I thought it was normal that, because my mom was drinking at 5 a.m., that meant she could drive me, because she could do it because she's a mom. I look up to my mom. You learn from your parents. If I had taken anything I learned from my parents, I don't think I'd be the person I am today. And so that to me was like a lot of times when those things would happen are like my mom would drive us drunk, or my mom would elbow me in the face. Like those are things where I was like, I'd go up to my room and I'd cry, and I just would stare up at the sky and say, why me? And yeah, I always knew that there was something better. I always knew that there was someone better. I always knew that no matter what, I was going through all of this for a reason, but it was hard. I think the biggest thing was like, I constantly was told it was my fault. Oh, I drink because of you. We wouldn't have been in this situation if it wasn't for you. I'd be 10 times happier if it wasn't for you. Growing up and hearing that, like, as much as I was like, oh, she's just drunk, or that's not true, part of you starts to believe it. Part of you just, after hearing it for so long, it's like, maybe it is my fault. So I think the biggest thing is like, of course, it's so easy to say, oh, hey, it's not your fault. But I don't know if I would have believed it. I think the biggest thing for people going through that is it's not your fault. Most people going through these things are acting out upon other people, need someone else to blame besides themselves. Number two, it gets better. It really does. I think the biggest thing is it's so hard. At least in my situation, it was hard because it's my mom and I didn't have a choice. But I think with other people, it's like, sometimes the best decisions are the hard ones. And sometimes, and it's so easy to put others before yourself, but it's so hard to put yourself before others for a lot of situations. And especially when you're stuck in an abusive relationship, whether it's parental, whether it's your sibling, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your partner, it's so difficult because at a certain point you think you could fix it or any of those things. I think the biggest thing is it does get better, but you have to put yourself first to do that. I can give all the advice that I could looking back on it because I'm in a better place now, but in the moment I never put myself first. I never, as much as I told myself I'd get better, I don't know if I didn't know. And that was always the scariest part, I think. I always looked at life and I saw people doing things that I wanted to do, and I always thought it wasn't in my cards. I always thought I wasn't supposed to be doing that. Because if I was, I wouldn't be put in an abusive household. I wouldn't have lost my dad. I wouldn't be upset with how I looked. People who went through life like I did don't end up in places like that. They make up stories like they came from where I did and end up there. So it's possible, I think, is the biggest thing. But I never put myself first in that moment. I never thought, this is my character arc. This is where I'm gonna, I could tell myself that, but I never thought it. I didn't cope well. I think my biggest thing is I wanted attention. I'd starve myself for days. I'd faint. I got admitted to a rehabilitation center where I would sleep there overnight and they'd make me eat. And I got the attention, but it wasn't, I don't know. I think I didn't mean to do it, but it just made sense, I guess. As cliche and as storybook told this is, it was when I met Cover that things started changing. I think I had searched my whole entire life for someone to care about me and to love me. And there she was. And so it's like, it's so, what did it? But it's all real. And I tell her this all the time. I told her this when I first met her. And it's like, it just made sense. And I've been saying this from the day that we met. It was a gut feeling. I knew I was going to marry you. I knew you were going to be the mother of my children. I knew all these things. And I would say it to her, which is kind of fucked up because she's like, let's get married today then. But yeah, it's just, I realized then and there, I think for the longest time, all I knew was bad. All I knew was the bad things of life, and Cover helped me see the good. Funny enough, my career started when I met Cover. I think it was the whole thing is in my head, I was so scared to pursue all these things. Or at least I was trying, but, you walk into a room and you have a negative connotation of how the room's going to be. That room is the minute you walk in, you're going to think you hate this room. If I go into a room and I'm like, I'm going to hate this room, you're going to walk in and you're going to hate it. I was constantly being told that I wasn't good enough. I couldn't sing well enough. This isn't a job. You can't do any of these things. It's like you can't follow your passions. You need to go to college and do all the things you're supposed to do. And Cover was a person who supported everything I wanted to do. She said I was good enough. She told me that I could sing. She told me that, all these different things. And it was something I think it was something I needed to hear. And so, as weirdly, homelessness should have been one of the worst times of my life. But every time I look back on it, it was like a new adventure every single day of me learning about myself, learning about the woman of my life, learning about what I loved about life. And forever, I will always appreciate that time and realize that it wasn't bad for me. Last year, someone really close to me tried to kill themselves. And when I was in the last day of my writing camp, I was told I had to write a happy song by my label. And I was like, fuck that. And so a good buddy of mine, Rolo, was writing, he was helping me write the song, and just starts playing on the piano this, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, and starts playing the piano riff to the song. And I'm like, holy fucking shit, this is the song. I've been trying to write something to this forever, and it just never worked. Like, it never felt right. It wasn't perfect, or it didn't do such a hard topic justice. And I was ready to give up. And then I heard this piano riff, and we're like, brother, don't go. And we just start going, and it's like, it happened so quick. We wrote it in like 30 minutes, something that we had spent a year trying to write. Randomly took 30 minutes once we got that. And I remember we turned off all the lights. We all cried. Everyone in that room, including my label, who was like, hey, you need to write a happy song. And he's like, fine. And once he heard it, and he's like, everyone in that room cried, and everyone looked at each other, and we go, this is important. This song is important. People need to hear it. You can fight it. You can choose to fight it. And it's never too late to do that.